Welcome back, Connecting Point. This is the third Sunday of Advent, Joy Week, and I've chosen King David to highlight this week. We recently studied the life of David in 1st and 2nd Samuel, so I won't say too much about his life story. I think most of you are pretty familiar with David's story, but I have selected 4 Davidic Psalms, that is, Psalms that were written by David, for us to look at today, as we consider the abundant joy that we claim as a result of Christ's advent into human history, and the joy that we possess as we consider the future that we have with Christ in glory. For the sake of time, I won't read the entirety of each psalm. I'll just be picking a few of the verses, so you can follow along with the slides. We're going to start with some sections from Psalm 16. This is a prayer to God for divine protection. David praises God for his rich blessings and declares his hope and trust in God for vindication and deliverance from sin and death. Psalm 16, verse 1. Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. There is nothing above or better than our God. There's nothing more desirable than the Lord. Jumping to verse 7. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel in the night. Also, my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. Therefore, my heart is glad and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. These verses are prophetically referring to the resurrection of Jesus and the glory that we will experience when we are completely in his presence for all of eternity. And in their original context, David, fully aware of the brevity of life, he's expressing a rugged confidence that his future is secure because he has taken refuge in the one true God. And as a result of David's trust in the Lord, David can know that he is being led along by God. David knows that he is safe in God as his refuge, both in life and in death. David has a lightness of heart and a joy that permeates his whole being. And he longs for the presence of God, in which there can be no presence of sin. I know we all identify as people who trust in the Lord. Trusting in the Lord is a foundation of our faith in Jesus, but it can be difficult to live in a way that says, Lord, I trust you. I trust you with my future, with my security, with my children or my job or my bank account. All of these different things in my life, I give you all of that. I trust you with all of it. And this psalm shakes us out of our temptation to maintain control for ourselves. And David says, I have set the Lord continually before me. And because he is at my right hand, I will not be shaken. Just as we saw last week when Doug spoke about peace, peace is an action. So too is joy. David continually puts his trust in the Lord, and that is why his heart is glad and his whole body rejoices. David reminds us that the path of life that has been laid out for us, this path leads us to his very presence and to where we find fullness of joy. In Psalm 16, David gives us these words to pray. Let's take a moment and do just that. Praise the Lord for his instruction and protection. Pray that the Lord will fill you with the kind of joy that permeates your whole being as you place your trust, your full trust in Him. Let's turn now to Psalm 18. In this song of praise, David, with poetic flair, recalls how the Lord delivered him and led him to victory. Psalm 18, starting in verse 1. A psalm of David, the servant of the Lord, who addressed the words of this song to the Lord on the day when the Lord rescued him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death encompassed me. The torrents of destruction assailed me. The cords of Sheol entangled me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called upon the Lord. To my God, I cried for help. From his temple, he heard my voice, and my cry to him reached his ears. He sent from on high. He took me. He drew me out of many waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. For this I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations, and sing to your name. Great salvation he brings to his king and shows steadfast love to his anointed, to David and his offspring forever. It can feel counterintuitive to praise the Lord in the midst of suffering or trials. James, the brother of Jesus, went so far as to say we should consider our troubles as an opportunity for great joy. I don't know about you, but I generally use my troubles as an opportunity to complain. When I consider the life of David, he's anointed as future king when he's only a youth, but then he didn't see the fulfillment of that promise for decades. And not only that, but he endured an incredible amount of suffering during that period of waiting. His wife and his best friend were taken from him. He was forced to live as a fugitive. He was hiding out in caves, even relying on enemy tribes to stay safe and stay alive. You and I, as onlookers to the story of David's life, we can see that all of that time and suffering in David's early years was preparation for David, to equip him and prepare him for the role that God had for his future. But I can't imagine it was easy for David to see that or have that perspective in the midst of those trials. I think this is what James, brother of Jesus, was getting at when he asks us to consider our troubles. When we're in the midst of trials, it can be difficult to see that there is something being developed in us that cannot be established during times of ease and comfort. That God will use seasons of suffering in our lives to develop a deeper, stronger, more rugged endurance on Him. And that dependence on Him and that trust in Him, like we saw in the last psalm, has the power to fill us with joy. James goes on to say, for you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. As we are called upon to continually put our trust in God and endure through suffering, we find that we grow. Our roots go down deeper and our blossoms shoot up higher. And joy comes as we start to see how we've emerged from suffering as people who are not easily shaken by the difficult circumstances of this life. We have this satisfaction that comes from knowing that we are recipients of God's unfailing love every day of our lives. David gives us this psalm, Psalm 18, to sing on the good days and on the bad days, to stir up our confidence in God and to fill us with a rugged joy in spite of pain. Let's take a few moments to consider what faithful endurance is being developed in you as you face the trials in your life. Let's turn now to Psalm 30. David is thanking the Lord for deliverance and urging others to join in with him in praising the Lord. Psalm 30, starting in verse 1. A psalm of David, a song at the dedication of the temple. I will extol you, O Lord, for you have drawn me up and have not let my foes rejoice over me. O Lord, my God, I cried to you for help, and you have healed me. O Lord, you have brought up my soul from Sheol. You restored me to life from among those who go down to the pit. Sing praises to the Lord, O you his saints, and give thanks to his holy name. For his anger is but a moment, and his favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes in the morning. You have turned for me my mourning into dancing. You have loosed my sackcloth and clothed me with gladness, that my glory may sing your praise and not be silent. O Lord my God, I will give thanks to you forever. This psalm was likely used in the dedication of the temple, which was completed after David's death. It's neat to see how David's individual prayer was used by the community to worship together. It shows that when the work of God that is done is shared with one another, it can be a source of encouragement and teaching for the whole community. In verse 5, there is an allusion to the connection between God's anger and human suffering. And this is a common motif in lament. We don't see any specifics here around what that sin is. But speaking from my own experience, it certainly is the case that sometimes our suffering is a result of our own poor choices. But sometimes suffering is actually the path towards deliverance. Think about Jesus' suffering. And we see in this psalm the deliverance come for David. In verse 11, the lament is turned into joy. Yahweh has delivered David. He's brought healing and restoration. And David's response is to praise and share the work of God with others. It can be very difficult to wait for the deliverance, for the healing and the restoration that God has promised. And we tend to lose hope quickly and sometimes even start to make false assumptions about whether God cares about us or if he's even listening to our prayers. David's psalm encourages us that God has heard our prayers and he is listening, he will answer. The truth of the matter is that sometimes God may not accomplish all of the healing and restoration on this side of heaven, but we can be confident that the day will come when his deliverance will be brought to completion. The day of the Lord will come when Jesus returns and makes all things new. His future promise causes us to see the waiting and the suffering in a different light. It causes us to ask ourselves whether we are longing for short-sighted ends or whether we are living and praying for the end for which God has made the world and God called his people to himself for. We may not fully comprehend how it will be on the day of Jesus' return, but we can know that God's promises are true and allow the knowledge of the future reality to fill us with counterintuitive joy in the present. And we know that this kind of joy is possible because we have seen it in the person of Jesus. Jesus had this kind of joy as he faced the greatest suffering that there is. Hebrews 12 says that it was for the joy set before him that he endured the pain and shame of the cross. And because Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faith, we can expect him to give us the faith and joy that we need too. So while we wait for Jesus to make all things new, may we, like David, not be silent, but sing his praise and give thanks to his holy name. Let's go to a table talk. Does the anticipation of Jesus' return in glory give you hope and joy for today? We have just one more psalm to cover, Psalm 34. In this song of thanksgiving, David praises God for delivering him and encourages others to come find out for themselves who the Lord is. Starting in verse 1, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Oh, fear the Lord, O you saints, for those who fear him have no lack. David declares that he will bless the Lord when? At all times. David is able to boast in the Lord because he knows the faithful love, justice, and righteousness of God through his own personal experience. And we know David's personal experience wasn't a vision of perfection. He had a rough life where he learned what it means to seek the Lord, to trust in him, to wait on him. David then encourages us to join in with him in magnifying and exalting the name of the Lord, to come, taste, and see for yourself that the Lord is good. In the earlier sections of this message, we discussed pursuing joy even in suffering and in trials and in waiting. But church, we're kidding ourselves if we think that we can have joy and endurance in the rough times when we can just barely think of having joy when the going is good. As they say, we must learn to walk before we can run. As C.S. Lewis puts it this way, we shall not be able to adore God on the highest occasions if we have learned no habit of doing so on the lowest. At best, our faith and our reason will tell us that he is adorable, but we shall not have found him so, not have tasted and seen. It is imperative that we learn to bless the Lord at all times, even in, or maybe especially in, the good times. Joy shows the world the power of God, the work of God, the glory of God are on display. Perhaps God will show his power through supernatural healing, and that is a great thing to pray for. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes God answers those prayers in big ways, and it's a great testament to his power and glory. That happens sometimes. But every day and every time the world can experience the power and work and glory of the living God through the character of the believer, through the display of joy in our lives. I think the church, speaking broadly, by and large, has lost its appreciation for joy. We've gone down this pursuit of authenticity that has, I think it's caused us to undervalue joy. And we need to make a habit of joy because it's an outward expression of an inner reality. I'm not asking you to lie about how you're doing. Don't say, oh, I'm doing great when really you're not. I'm saying let's be more truthful about, and more truthful with ourselves about the reality that Jesus Christ is the Lord of our lives. Do you remember the Sunday school song, I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart? Yeah, of course you do. Well, do you remember the second verse? I've got the wonderful love of my blessed Redeemer way down in the depths of my heart. And I think that second verse really informs the first verse of why there is joy in this person's life is because of this love that has gone down deep into the heart of the believer, that informs informs the rest of their being, right? We are blessed, church. We are anointed. We have the very power of the living God in us. We have been delivered out of the mire of sin and death and been set on this path toward life. We can all agree that, yep, that's true. That's right. But what if we walked around like we know it's true? What if we walked around like those things define our lives? I think if we did that, we would look very much like David's encouragement to us to bless the Lord at all times. As we close, I hope you'll take a few moments to think about ways that you can cultivate a habit of joy in your life. Take some time to pray for one another. Pray for us. We need your prayers, and know that we love you and we are praying for you all the time. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.